G'day all, welcome back to Frostbite's G.I. Joe Repro. So today we're going to go through another comic issue. I know you guys have been loving this and I really appreciate the support you guys have been giving me towards the channel for these particular videos. I've always loved the comics. I'm not an expert on the comics. So yeah, as I keep mentioning, this is it's a really great opportunity for me to be able to go back and look at those issues that I have forgotten, because we're all in our late 80s, 40s now. Feels like 80s sometimes, and yeah, we just don't remember everything, and that's why these comics are around, right? So that we can go back and relive those moments. When we were kids reading these things for the first time, and that's it's probably the best thing about having a bad memory and forgetting these things is we can go back and have a great time reading them again. Now, today we're going to go over issue 19, and I want to just say off the start, this issue is a real banger. I want to thank Johnny T16, one of the fans of the channel, who recommended or requested, whichever way you want to put it, that we do this particular comic. And it wasn't until I checked out the cover to do the video, and I thought, man, I've done this. I've looked at this comic several times, and I've done a few different videos which have featured this comic in particular. This comic is just, like I said, such a banger. It's got so much going on in it that yeah, it's made several of my videos. In particular, deaths, like Joe deaths, and like the 50 most interesting facts that I found about G.I. Joe comics. Just, several videos. Go back and check them out if you can. I've read this several times now, and it doesn't disappoint anytime. So yeah, let's kick into this comic. Okay, straight into the cover. This cover is excellent. I feel like, we have number one, like that was a beautiful cover. And then this is almost, to me, like a sequel of covers. It's just a total action scene. In some ways, I reckon you could say this is even better than the number one cover. The number one cover sort of has that leaping into battle look, whereas this cover is more of a, actual battle occurring. You've got Destro sitting on top of a hiss, got your hiss driver inside there. Those hiss guns are just blaring. And then in front of the hiss, you've got your Joes. You can see Scarlet there. You can see Stalker. You can see Breaker, who's taken a quick moment for a bit of a bubblegum break. And the dude up the front. I think I've mentioned this in videos before, but I would say that that's Grunt. But yeah, I can feel that it could be Hawk as well, but I'd probably point towards Grunt for that one. We've got the G.I. Joe logo in a beautiful bright yellow. And I think what really makes this cover for me, and I've mentioned this in my 50 interesting facts video, is we don't have Grunt in the top left-hand corner like we usually do for the Joe comics. And instead we have Linda Grant, who was the assistant editor that month for this comic. It was what they deemed as Assistant Editors Month. So I think they just got different people to go around and do different comics, and provide a bit of assistance, obviously. And yeah, Linda Grant was the lady that was helping with this one. So they very nicely took Grunt out of that top left-hand picture and put her in there, or a look of her. And I think that's really nice. It certainly, for this particular comic, gave it something different. Not only do we just get this amazing cover, but we also got a little bit of trivia going along with it. And I really like that. All right, so then we hit this first page, and what a whopper, like it's a full page piece of art, and that to me is a beautiful thing. You can just imagine the artist sitting there and spending time to do this just one piece of beautiful art, and I really appreciate that. At the top of the screen, we've got that beautiful Stan Lee presents with such a just a really nice thing to see in these comics, and especially GI Joe, because I know I feel Stan Lee gets associated so much with Marvel characters in particular, when really like he was touching everything produced by Marvel, and I don't I don't feel like GI Joe was a Marvel character, but he was still there for it. So yeah, I like that. Just a simple thing. Then we see a whole bunch of Joes, I believe would be termed as green shirts. Um, they're doing some construction work. You get one of them stating that they're assembling a prefab fortress on the heavy equipment level of the pit, and it's 30 feet below ground level. Um, they, you can tell they're green shirts. The conversation going on is not too exciting. Now, I think the most exciting thing that is occurring on this page is we have Doc and Snowjob wheeling at the time who we believe is the Baroness. And you have Gung Ho saying, that'd be looking like the Baroness be wheeling in. So all we can see is the dark, like the black locks of hair. So, and we know what's happened to her in the previous comic. So we just go, yep, that's the Baroness. Now, if we go and check Chameleon's file card, and I'm not talking about modern day Chameleon. So if I start to lose you here, go back and check out my video on Chameleon. But the quick answer here is in the year 2000, G.I. Joe released a very much Baroness looking figure. It was pretty much the Baroness, except I believe she had a red costume on, and they detailed her to be Chameleon, codename Chameleon, and it's the Baroness's sister. So go back and check out my video on Chameleon. That like I fully explain what happened in that video. But what it points to is this comic does not feature Baroness; it features Chameleon, and that is what I consider to be one of the best points of this comic. So yeah, these boys just keep wheeling Baroness through while all this construction's getting done on this level. All right, we get onto the second page, and we start to, whilst we see Chameleon or Baroness, whoever you want, getting rolled past by Doc. We see a bit of a discussion going on regarding a prisoner. General Flagg is talking to Hawk, and General Flagg asks, Scarface here claims that Dr. Venom injected him with a deadly plague toxin and deliberately had him captured so he could infect G.I. Joe headquarters. And that is the story here. And the Joes basically just sort of stand there and they're talking to him, and it's all about trying to work out what the hell is going on. They find, or Scarface tries to loosen up an antidote from his boot, and explains that he stole it from Dr. Venom's briefcase, and that he heard the plan exactly from Destro and Cobra Commander. And it's at that point that we see the big boys leave the room. They leave Stalker in with them. Hawk basically tells Stalker if he becomes a problem, give him a bit of a whopping. and they end up walking out, and then they're still talking about the plague toxin, and it was all extended story. That uh, it's not the most exciting thing that occurs in this comic to me. Okay, on page 3, we have Hawk explaining to General Flag the plan. He's got his little model of the motor pool sitting on top of the pit. We can see 5 layers of the pit in there, in that model. And he's basically explaining to General Flag that, yes, Cobra will think they know where the pit is or where the G.I. Joe headquarters are. And General Flag raises the point of, well, once they know where they are, they know where they are. And Hawk says that the surface will be compromised, but, when you look at a location on a map, you don't think about what's under the location on the map, you just think about the location. And then Hawk mentions that he's brought up General Blood Major Blood and Baroness up to the pit, so that apparently they can't miss the show. To which, General Flag sort of weirdly says, right, good initiative. And I can't actually tell if that's meant to be sarcasm or he's a bit dumb and that's what he's decided to come out with. That to me would sort of be something along the lines of, if I was thinking Zartan had taken over someone, that's the kind of speech I'd be expecting to see from him. Or maybe General Flag wasn't as smart as we thought he was, or Hawk's maybe a bit smarter. I don't know. It just seemed like a really odd statement to me. And then we flick to Cobra headquarters, and we see Destro telling Coco that the computer's finished its analysis, and it's found a point. He's going to run it up on the big screen, which in that time would have been some kind of super expensive Sony Trinitron, I'm guessing, with the 3 colors. And yeah, Coco gets super excited and says, "We've done it. We've located G.I. Joe headquarters." Okay, page 4. We see Coco in, an excellent stance. Like, this is a really nice drawing of Coco, I believe. And we have him mentioning that got to get all the dudes down to G.I. Joe Town so that they can sort that out. And then he starts talking about, in some way, like he says, we can't allow the Joes to pick the brains of their Cobra prisoners, and that Major Blood knows too much, and the Baroness. And Destro, freaks out like he's just shit his pants or something and screams, "The Baroness, you said she was dead." And Coco's a bit like, "Oh, of course she's dead. I was going to say it was lucky the Baroness wasn't captured alive. She did know too much for her own good, don't you think?" It was sort of a funny moment for Coco. And Destro's like, "Oh, you jokester, you got me. It sounded like you were saying," and then Coco just changes the conversation. Like, shit's just that easy, right? Changes the conversation. "You had better alert Dr. Venom about the assault. Do you know where to reach him?" And yeah, he's hanging out. Apparently, his private lab on the abandoned wharf in Brooklyn. So yeah, a whole bunch of interaction there between Destro and Coco, and I thought it was funny interaction. Funny, but not trying to be funny. I thought serious, but funny. And then we get transported to the old Brooklyn Navy Yard, where apparently Dr. Venom's got his secret lab. I thought this was funny. Like, if you're going to put a private lab run by a dude called Dr. Venom, like, everything is pointing to pure evil. Let's just put it in this little dock house on the side of a Navy yard. Okay. So yeah, this is where we then have Quinn playing with Snake Eyes. It's not our first appearance of Quinn. We've seen him earlier. But yeah, he calls Snake Eyes Shadow Man, and that's funny. Bit of a nickname. He says we've tracked this man for 3,000 miles. He owes us, each of us, his life, but he's betrayed us and plotted our deaths at every step. And then he asks Snake Eyes, have you come, why have you come with me to see Dr. Venom? And then as they crash through the window, like, how good's this little dock house? It's got glass roof. Yeah, they crash through the top, and while screaming, nothing matters anymore. And it's at that point Dr. Venom, he realizes he's about to get a whooping. He knows it's Quinn and Snake Eyes, and he proposes that they just have a little chat. He seems to like that idea a lot more. All right, on to the 5th page. And from above, we just hear the whoop, 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 which is, that's choppers in Joe World. Whoop, 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 whoop. Where, while that's happening and Quinn is ready to beat another hole into Venom's face, that's when Venom explains, they're Cobra helicopters. We get a bit more of the whoop, 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 whoop. And Venom keeps explaining that there's too many Cobra troopers on these choppers for even Quinn to kill. Then down below, we get a bit of an explanation. Across the Narrows from Brooklyn lies Staten Island. And as everyone knows, Staten Island is the home of the United States Army Chaplains Assistance School at Fort Wadsworth. It's what's underneath Port Wadsworth that concerns the rest of the story, but that's a secret, right? So that's sort of that cool fourth dimension thing that we get from some comics where you're talking to the listener. So good on them for doing that. I don't feel that we actually see a lot of that in G.I. Joe comics. So you just get these little examples and they're great. We see Scarlet, an old school Scarlet, where she's like, golly, guys, I sure wish we were going on this retreat with the rest of you chaplains' assistants. As she sort of walks the chaplain's assistants onto the bus, like, out you go, bro. So they're effectively just evacuating all non-necessary personnel. And we see Breaker and Clutch coming in, and they start talking about how all the ambulances are around the motor pool like wagons in a circle. I thought that was pretty cool. And we have Wild Bill and the Dragonfly approaching, and he's got the prisoner. So he's got major blood from memory, and he gets the clear to land. So not a lot of vital stuff going on this page. There is a lot of stuff, but none of it's really vital. It's that point of just adding more to the story. Okay, on to page 6. I've always found this particular page pretty interesting. It's been one of my sort of interesting ones out of all the comics, and it's for a really simple fact. So we have Short Fuse saying, I don't like this tripwire. Setting up claymore mines in ambulances must be against the Geneva Convention, as he's holding a claymore. And then we have Tripwire saying, we're not setting them in the ambulances, Short Fuse. We're setting them underneath the ambulances. He goes on to say, besides, do you know that most weapons used by American police departments are illegal under the rules of the Geneva Convention? So what I find interesting about this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure America is not actually part of the Geneva Convention. So what does it actually matter? So yeah, just one of those interesting things. We go to the point of talking about it, but how much does it actually matter? We see Wild Bill bringing in Major Blood, and they handcuff him to the radiator. And then we keep going down. We've got Clutch and Breaker. They've parked the Vamp. And they're asking, what'll it be? Do you think Cobra will attack from the land or from the sea? And Clutch says, yeah, it'll be both. So meanwhile, in Brooklyn, apparently, we have a metric shit ton of Cobra troopers intent on busting into the little shack. And apparently that's because Dr. Venom failed to give the proper recognition signal. So, yeah, that's cool. We have Quinn and Snake Eyes within the lab, the dockside shack. And Dr. Venom's sort of, holed up on the ground, and I think he just knows, like, there's a whole bunch of troopers coming, so he's just got to wait it out. And they're basically saying that there's not a lot of weapons in there, and Dr. Venom's saying, well, it's a lab, bro, so what do you expect? And Quinn tells Snake Eyes, aka Shadow Man, that he'll have to improvise. Okay, on page 7, it's at this point we see Snake Eyes getting his lower transformer half on into the snake armor, of course, and we see a bit of dialogue between Quinn and Dr. Venom regarding the powers of the suit. Quinn's like, bro, get it moving because we need some help. Start shooting. Dr. Venom lets him know that it needs to be powered on from this particular place. And Quinn tells him to turn it on. So he turns it on, and we see a bit of a bzzz from the head of the snake armor. And then we go back to Quinn, who's, for some reason, firing a pistol right next to his face. And yeah, I know why we did it. It's so that we can fit everything in the comic pane. But yeah, next time you're on the range, I'm talking Americans, obviously, because we don't have guns in our back pockets. Try that. I don't reckon it's going to go that well. So I don't know why we didn't see an extended comic pane for that one. But, he starts saying that, yep, now we're going to start kicking ass. We see the snake armor take the pistol off him and then throw him like a ragdoll against a bench. And that looks like it hurts. Okay, on to page 8. We see Quinn, he's been shit whipped, so he's laying on the ground having a kip. And see all the Cobra troopers and Destro's smashed in through the door. And we get this explanation from Dr. Venom that basically once you put the suit on and use that, you're under its control. So, stiff shit. And Destro explains that, yep, all good, and we're going to get to use them under field conditions. To which Dr. Venom's very excited about that. Coco explains that they found the G.I. Joe headquarters and the wharf will be the staging point. They order that Quinn be put into the other suit. So now we have 2 suits. We then get thrown back to the pit, and we're with General Flag and Doc and Covergirl. So Covergirl must be, a bit of a medical assistant, apparently. So we get more of this dialogue, which is based on, morals and ethics and doing the right thing. Doc explains that the prisoner shouldn't have been brought there in the first place. She was, but now that she's there, she shouldn't be moved to a location that could be part of a firefight. And General Flag is no shits given, basically says, move a bro and I'll take responsibility. And I sort of feel that I'll take responsibility was whatever happens, happens, mate. So she's a prisoner. She's an enemy prisoner. They're not part of the Geneva Convention, as far as I know. So if something happens, he'll take responsibility. And then that's when Flag says that, everyone's going to load into the fortress and they're going to seal everything off. Okay, on to page 9. We see Hawk and Steeler, and they're going through effectively the prefab fortress. I like this idea of a prefab fortress. Something that can withstand attacks is what baffles me. Great idea. I'd love to see it in action. If someone that has knowledge of this kind of thing, like, is this a real thing? Prefab fortress. But yeah, they're having a chat about that, and the Steel is basically saying, "Hey, how are we going to get it up to the top?" And Hawk says, "We're going to hydraulically lift it up." So that's pretty cool. And then we see the prisoners being ordered out, and they're going to go for a little bit of a ride. We see Major Blood getting put into the vehicle into the vamp with Scarface, and obviously, I don't, I don't know if he just doesn't like Scarface or I think he's just an asshole in general. So he starts gobbling off about old mate's personal BO and needing a breath freshener and stuff. Clutch and Brake are driving around, and they see all of the Cobra choppers coming over the water. And what sound does the Cobra choppers make? Whoop, 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 whoop. On page 10, we see Hawk telling Steel to hit the switch, saying, the Cobra's here. And Steeler says the obvious problem, which that Clutch and Breaker are still out there with the prisoners driving around in the van. And Hawk says, basically, leave the garage door open. That's their problem. They'll have to figure it out. To when we cut outside and we see Clutch and Breaker screaming along in that van. And they know what the problem is. They know that the Cobra helos are coming, doing their whoop, 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 whoop. And they know it's best to get into that garage. And we see him screaming along. And I did like it that, Clutch is telling Breaker, like, don't stress too much. Either way, you won't feel a thing. Everything's fine. And we see the ground start to open up. On page 11, we see the vamp just about to enter the garage, and get this real wordy verbiage. So one of them saying, "I say, do you hear that distinctive sound of an air-to-ground missile, like the angel of death belching through a penny whistle?" I'm pretty sure if I was in that van, I may have already pissed myself, and I would be letting out a long expletive starting with F. But apparently, Breaker gets pretty wordy at that point of life, and we sort of get that. We get a weird, like a weird description of, isn't it amazing how your sense of hearing becomes more sensitive when you're deprived of sight? That's obviously when he's going in through the darkness. We've seen that the prefab fortress has come up through the ground within the garage, and see those missiles just on the arse end of that vamp. And they must have just like got in with the skin of a bee's dick, because those missiles basically, they get in, door slams down, and the missiles hit, and that's when Destro announces that it was a perfect hit. and wait for the smoke to clear and we can assess the damage. Okay, page 12, we see the fortress has fully come up, the smoke's starting to clear, and Destro announces that the motor pool building was a facade. It covered an armored fortress. And then I think Coco's one of them saying, of course, no one ever assumed G.I. Joe headquarters wouldn't be heavily defended. We see Destro giving out movement orders to Dr. Venom. For Dr. Venom to, which would be assuming is still at what they call the staging point, which is the wharf, because I would have thought it'd be a bit funny to, like Dr. Venom runs a laboratory, right? Like his thing is making stuff. He's not a war guy. So even though he is at the staging point, like, couldn't you have brought other people along to, be your generals or whatever? It's a funny thing, because by doing this, it almost says to me that you think Dr. Venom is this war guy. He's not. He's a scientist. We see a crapload choppers coming in, little fangs, and that's when the fortress starts to light up. And they say all radar guided anti-aircraft batteries in full operation. And that's pretty cool. We see him just blatting these things. So, yeah, looks good. Okay, page 13. We see, an order for Cobra troopers to move forward. And we also see in the same shot the claymores. And, see a bit of cockiness from the troopers as they move towards the ambulances. And then, blam, they just get torn apart. If you know what a claymore does, then it's not good for your sinuses. So that's them taken care of. See Destro announcing that they've annihilated the air support and decimated the infantry cover. So now it's time to bring out the hisses. And to me, it's a funny thing. If you just lost your infantry and you've lost your air support, that would probably be a good time to retreat. Not let's send more shit at these people. It doesn't sound good. Now, in this next frame, it says inside the fort, we see the pack rats getting deployed. And the order is torpedo open the side door for deployment of pack rats. Now, it's not torpedo, it's tripwire. So that was an error in this issue. Hawk starts to question the pack rats because they haven't been deployed before, apparently. And Stalker suggests, yep, it's a good time to find out. We then cut back down to Doc, Baroness Chameleon. I'm just going to call it Chameleon from now on because that's who I think it is. Major Blood and Scarface in a prison cell. And Major Blood's trying to get a rise out of Doc, saying, basically, you're useless, you're down here with the prisoners. And Doc, being the pacifist that he is, does not care. On page 14, we see the pack rats come out the door, and they just, start tearing up his tanks. I don't know what sort of looks worse here is these big his tanks being apparently awesome pieces of kit, or what these I haven't got these toys. I haven't got these pack rats. It might be something I chase up after this, actually. But yeah, I'm sure I've seen one of these in person, and they were just a small little toy. So yeah, it must be pretty bad that they're just ripping his tanks up. Yeah, Coco realizes it's become a massive problem for the first wave of his tanks. And that's when Dr. Venom says, let's send in the snake suits and they can bust up the pack rat. And that's when we cut to both Quinn and Snake Eyes stuck in their snake suits. Okay, page 15, we see Dr. Venom send in the snake suits. And then we get this very vital question coming from Coco. So he says, I don't think I like the idea of using Quinn and Snake Eyes in the snake suits. What if they overcome the mind control components and turn the weaponry on us? That's a very good question, Coco. Dr. Venom says that's impossible. So, yeah. And why is it impossible? Because the weapon systems are pre-programmed that they cannot fire at anything painted in Cobra blue. Hilarious. What a weapon system. Let's just say they can't fire on blue. You know. Meanwhile, Dr. Venom is what color? So they start ripping shit up, ripping the pack rats up. And for some weird reason, like, you know, this has got to be the stupidest thing in this particular issue, is Hawk says, crazy, I could swear one of those battle suits out there has a familiar walk. You know someone that just walks like this, do you, Hawk? Because that's all that robot's going to do, right? It's just literally pieces of metal. And then Stalker says, maybe your Aunt Tilly signed up with the bad guys. Yeah. Like, this page has some really pretty funny dialogue going along with it. And it's at that point that we start getting Dr. Venom talking to Snake Eyes again. So that previous comic video, saw Dr. Venom talking to Snake Eyes, and man, Dr. Venom, he's pretty up himself, right? So he thinks he's pretty invincible. But yeah, he's literally talking to Snake Eyes, saying, do you think that you can, defeat my mind probe like you did in Springfield? And yeah, you're going to have to get all your strength together, but yeah, you won't. Okay, on page 16, we go back to Snake Eyes being in that machine in Springfield. And there's some really cool art there, I think. We're seeing like Snake Eyes in his sort of arced position on the machine, and sort of the blending of his heads there. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that's it's leading to the point that he overcame the machine, and now he's overcome the snake armor. So Snake Eyes in the snake armor turns around and starts blatting at the hiss tank. He's reminded really quickly that his shots are missing because the hiss is in Cobra blue, and he can't fire on that. It's at this point that Dr. Venom orders Quinn to start firing on Snake Eyes. We see an indicator here that even though Quinn has to do what he's told, he knows what he's doing. So he says, Shadow Man, you have your will. The suits are vulnerable to each other. Shoot the restraining locks from my suit. So he knows what he's doing, but he can't control himself. And I feel like that's the first we saw of how snake armor actually works. So it's at that point that Snake Eyes, from the ground, does a bit of a shoot from the hip in the snake armor and blows the restraining locks off. And that's it. Quinn's loose. Quinn's loose, baby. And yeah, Dr. Venom, he's having that shit the pants moment. It's like, Quinn's loose. Turn the entire tank around because I can't shoot at him. So we're not thinking about running him over or anything like that. The big Eskimo guy is loose, so let's turn around and go. Let's leave. Quinn's not having any part of that, and he picks up part of the pack rat and starts running, and whilst yelling, "Too late, Venom." So on page 17, we see Quinn attack with the pack rat, blaster, machine gun, whatever it is, and hit the hiss. And that shuts that shit right down. These hiss do not appear very powerful. So, yeah, Quinn just takes care of that real quick. And he starts going at Venom, Dr. Venom. And his tanks start firing. It's, this separate thing going on. So Quinn's going at Dr. Venom, and all the other his tanks firing on the Joe forces. We see a Sky Striker come in. That's cool. And Ace is obviously flying that. And that's when we see all the apparent fighting vehicles getting deployed as well. So everything's just coming out. Like this has now turned into that full-size battle. And that's pretty cool. So on page 18, we've got Quinn looking to finish off Dr. Venom, and not with a knife, not with a gun, but he's going full grenade. Basically saying that the grenade of all pills, it would be the most bitter, but you'll swallow it. I'll see to that. So pretty intense what he's basically saying. He's going to jam it down his throat. We then go back to the top of the fortress, and we see a Fang landing on the side of that. We have a Cobra trooper setting a bomb. And it's at this point the Doc, with the jail cell door open, and he's back to the prisoners, decides that might be a good time to try and analyze what has now landed on the roof, and that it's maybe Wild Bill. To which Major Blood, being a little bit smarter than Doc, when I say a little bit smarter, I mean a whole bunch more smarter than Doc, shit whips Doc in the back of the head, which sends him to ground. On page 19, and this is the start of the escape, and one of the deaths. So Major Blood's explaining that there's a Fang on the roof, and now him getting away is more feasible. He's gotten the handcuff keys off Doc, and he explains to Scarface that Scarface won't be leaving with him. He will be taking Baroness because, it'd be easier to trade for with Destro. General Flag pops in at that point, like, "Hello, boys, what's cracking?" Has the gun trained on Major Blood. Scarface boots the gun out of Flag's hand, and Blood shoots and kills Flag. Scarface begs for his life, and Blood, being the asshole that he is, tells him to get stuffed and goes up on the roof, shoots the trooper that bought the Fang there, and we see him fly off with Baroness on the left-hand side of the Fang, whilst the bomb continues to tick, 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 and the helo goes, "What?" Whoop, 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 whoop. On page 20, we see Quinn's gone into some weird-ass descent of madness. He says, "The weasel taunts me. He whines and whimpers. He wants blood. He lives in your belly, yet he craves your death. The weasel isn't strong like the bear. The weasel relies on cunning. He lies. The weasel spirit lives in me also. I am the biggest liar here. I have lied to myself. You cannot fight the weasel and others until you conquer him within." Like, dude, you've lost the plot. But he, in the end, gives Venom his life, lets him go. And that's as we see Clutch and Breaker and the Vamp approach Snake Eyes, who then points at Quinn being an absolute lunatic. We then flick to in the fortress. The bomb up on the top of the fortress is doing the tick, 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 tick thing. As Doc thinks it's a good idea to drag Flag out for a medevac, leaving the prisoner alive and chained to the jail cell. And then we see Venom saying, "Don't turn your back on me, Quinn, you arrogant lout, you wear your moral superior," blah, 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 blah. It's very wordy, this issue. Few of these characters, it's quite funny at the start. Quinn didn't really say a lot. And then as he got a little bit more lunatic, he just couldn't shut up. And Venom was always, that sort of smart dude that just had to talk to hear his own voice. Okay, page 21. Venom just blatantly shoots Quinn in the back. And Quinn stumbles around for a bit. Venom, has his blah, blah, blahs going on. Quinn explains that he's all good. He's all good. Not angry anymore. Nothing to see here. He falls to the ground dead. And Clutch and Breaker realize that something has fallen from Quinn's hand, and it's the unpinned grenade, which falls at Venom's feet. And yeah, that's supposedly the end of Venom, Dr. Venom at that point. Okay, on the last page, so page 22, we see the tickety tick 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 going as the fortress explodes and is decimated. Who would have thought that a prefab fortress would just blow up with one good, piece of explosive? We see Doc announce that General Flag is dead. So, that was the death of General Flag. Coco announces that they've destroyed G.I. Joe headquarters and they should regroup and retreat. And so we head into Hawk, talking to the Joes now. And he says, "How's that for a victory? They've lost and they don't even know it. The secret of the pit is still safe, and we inflicted losses of material personnel that they'll feel for some time." Looks like Leatherneck saying, "Speaking of losses, is everyone accounted for?" And Hawk says, "All here except for Clutch, Breaker, Doc, and Snake Eyes." And that's when Hawk announces that they're coming up on the vamp. And he asks, "Why the long faces, fellas? We've just won a major victory," as Snake Eyes and Doc hand over Quinn's skull necklace and made General Flag's dog tags. So that's the end of the panels. So there you go. That was issue number 19. Absolute banger. It's always a pleasure to read. Just a heap of characters used in that comic. There's a heap of battle scenes. We've got some of the best characters used. As far as the storyline goes, to me, it's just amazing. It's such a sad storyline to read, especially towards the end. And I feel that just couldn't have been done any better, except for handing over the dog tags and the skull necklace at the end to show that, it wasn't really a victory at all when you're losing troops in battle. So, yeah, well done, Larry Harmer on that one. Well done, Marvel. It was, it was a well inked and written issue. So yeah, number 19. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it. If this content was something you liked, make sure you hit that like button, and please hit the sub button if you're not subbed. Also, please feel free to check out channel memberships. It's a way of getting extra content from your Uncle Frosty, and supporting the channel and giving me that motivation to just keep pumping out more channel content. But if you've reached this point in the video, thank you so much. If you've got any suggestions on something you'd like me to cover, like as per this video, please let me know. Just drop me comments or contact me via my Insta account. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, stay frosty. Bye-bye.